Yep.
Can we use our own computer?
Absolutely. So if you have a Mac, feel free to do that. Or if you have a PC and you started doing that MOBA Xterm stuff and can connect to Jaguar that way, go ahead and do that. Or if you have Windows 10 and that Linux subsystem thing, feel free to use that. And at this stage in the game, you can go back and forth. So if you have your own computer but aren't sure about it yet, feel free to log in to the lab computer, use it, and then you can always switch to your Mac a little bit later, or your PC a little bit later. So this is the world that most of you have been living in and are most comfortable with. There are one-to-one corresponding commands between what you would do here and what you would do in the graphical world. So in the graphical world, you would refer to these as folders, and in this world you'd refer to them as directories. So if I say directory and your mind wants to think folder, just do the mental switch. You can, depending on whether you're on Windows or a Mac, it's a little bit different for creating a folder. So I'm sure you know how to create a folder graphically. Let me show you how to create a directory at the command prompt. You just type mkdir for make directory, and then you give it a name. So I'll call it folder 1. And you can see that it appeared there. Okay. What I'm going to do, let me start. Oops. Oh, 24. So let me call this, I'll call this Linux notes.text. So make directory, make directory. Oh, so the text file I'm creating here, you can see that's appearing there. This right here, so this is what I would call this thing that I wave around, I'd call this a terminal window. Okay, so that's my terminal. I've got it divided into two. I just ignore that. By and large, that's what it's going to look like for you. That's fine. It just makes it easier for me to talk about things if I bring two things up at once. This, I would say that that's my prompt or my shell prompt. And this stuff to the left is, if you do not do anything, it's normally configured by the administrator of the machine you're on. However, you do have, if you know how to do it, you have the ability to change that to whatever you want. So my only reason for saying that is, depending on whether you're working on your Mac or you're working on Jaguar, what you see here will not necessarily be the same. So this prompt actually, this shell prompt, is for my Macintosh. I can log in without getting into the details of the syntax of me doing it. Let me just go to Jaguar just to show you. It's going to give me a little bit of information here, and eventually it will. I don't know. There we go. You'll note that this definitely looks different from what we saw when I'm on my Mac. So that's just to emphasize there's nothing hard hallowed about that. It's just whatever the administrator or whatever the user sets up. What I can do is there's a sense of where you are. Now it's a little bit more loosey-goosey when you're dealing with a graphical user interface. If I said, well, where are you now? You just kind of shrug. I don't know. I'm on my computer and I've just got these windows open, right? But I can force the issue a little bit. And if I'm looking at only a single window at a time, I can say, when I'm looking at this window, I am in the 2019-01-24 directory. So in that sense, there's kind of a sense of where you are at the moment in the graphical world. It's much more firm here at a terminal, and the question is, where are you at any point in time? And I can type pwd, which means print working directory, which shows you where you currently are. Okay. Now you're able to change that location through a series of double clicking. If I want to actually, in the graphical world, I want to change into and make my current location inside of folder 1, I just double click on it, right? Here, the command to change directory is, whoops, oh no, I've done it. I switched it. Hang on. Change. All right. Give me just a moment. All right. CD. Change directory. Oh, and let me do this print working directory again to look at it. You'll note that it's separated by slashes. Each of these is a folder. So there's a users folder, to use the graphical terminology, a users directory. Inside of the users directory is a T. Gibson. Inside of that is Chico, so on and so forth. You'll note that this format looks similar to what you have when you're using URLs, and I'm sure you're all familiar with these, right? They're separated by slashes. The reason why in web browsers these different things are separated by slashes, so this is pop inside of the system76.com, is the reason for this look is that the people who invented the web came from the Unix world. And Linux and Unix are interchangeable in this context. So Linux didn't borrow this from the web borrowed this from Linux or Unix. How do you change into folder 1 if let me bring this back up. To change into folder 1, I merely say cd folder 1. And now if I do a pwd, you can see that, let me zoom in on that. You can see that when I did pwd here, it said I was in this directory. And now I change into folder 1. I print working directory again, and now we can see that I'm inside of folder 1, which is inside of 2019-01-24. Yeah, pretty straightforward. The command I didn't talk about, but have shown right here, ls. ls is directory listing. That's just showing you what's inside of it. So inside of folder 1, there's nothing. And if I do an ls, nothing appears. If you want to go up to the parent, and it's in other words, if I want to go back to 2019-01-24, it is cd, and then dot dot always means cd into parent directory. So if I do that, cd dot dot pwd, and now it shows I'm back here where I was in folder 1. And now if I do an ls, it shows that both folder 1 and this Linux note.txt are inside of this 2019-01-24. The GUI equivalent of that is, at least in the Mac world, I'd click on this up here, control click, and then I just go up one. All right. Let me create another directory. Make directory folder 2. One thing you'll have noticed is as I've changed directories, we've noted that this prompt has changed, and in this case it's actually quite helpful. It's showing me that I'm currently in folder 1, and then when I changed into the parent directory, it showed that I was in this directory, right, which matches this right here. That is convenient, but don't lose sight of this PWD because, as I said, this is fully configurable and this information might not be there depending on the machine you're on, so you can't count on it. For instance, there's no indication at all of what directory I'm in, and I'd have to type PWD to reveal that information. Clear? We'll clear your screen. And I'm going to, what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of moving things around and renaming and so forth. So this is a command you don't have to be worried about. Feel free to do it. I'm going to call it, I don't know, I'll call it myfile.txt. And all that's doing is that's creating it. You see it created it right here. It's an empty file. There's nothing inside of it. It's just giving me something to work with, or something for you to work with if you're following along. Do an ls. We can see just as there are 2 folders and 2 files here, there are 2 folders and 2 files shown here with the ls. Move is the command to move. Actually, let me start with copy. cp is copy. And I can say copy myfile.txt to another .txt. That creates an exact copy of it. If I don't like it, I can remove it. Oops. Feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have questions. One thing, a couple things to note at this point is that Linux is an operating system that was written, obviously all operating systems are written by programmers, but they were written for programmers. Now let me switch that. Microsoft Windows was written for users, right? That's why you can sit down and start pointing and clicking and dragging so easily. It was designed for people who don't know anything about computers or may not have used a computer before, whereas it's a much more difficult proposition to get familiar with things at this level. The reason I say it was designed for programmers is that one thing programmers don't like having is their time wasted. And an example of wasting time is what happens if I go over here to empty my trash can. What's it going to do? Are you sure? Right? If you're a programmer, that's a waste of time. Don't ask me. I wouldn't have deleted the thing if I didn't want to. You're never asked if you want to do something. It always assumes that you mean exactly what you say. It's going to do it as quickly as possible with as little feedback as possible. So a lot of the stuff I'm doing doesn't give me any message. I just get another prompt. No information means it worked just fine. If I try to remove a file that doesn't exist, it'll tell me if I do something it can't do. So it tells you if there are errors, otherwise it doesn't. There is no trash can in Linux. Now, if you bring up a graphical user interface in Linux, you'll see a trash can there, or a recycle bin, or whatever they call it. But at this level, there is no kind of way station where trash is dumped and you can go recover it if you accidentally deleted it. This file that I deleted right here, it is gone. There is no way for me to get it back. It does not exist. Okay, the minute you remove something, it's removed. So the way around that is system administrators normally make backups, right? You have another disk somewhere or the cloud in this day and age, and every hour or every day there's a full backup of the system made and it's pushed to some backup drive so that if Accidents do happen. If you accidentally delete something you really, really needed, you go to the system administrator and say, hey, can you recover this file off the backups? I accidentally deleted it. So that's how that works. It's a human process for recovering information. At the technical level here, the minute you remove a file, it is gone. All right? That goes for other things like, let me write my Linux notes here. If I copy Linux notes and I want to copy it onto myfile.txt. Now myfile.txt had this wonderful letter to mom I was writing. The letter to mom is now gone. Myfile.txt now contains an exact copy of Linux notes, right? And note, it does not say, are you sure you want to overwrite this file? It overwrote that file. It assumes that I know what I'm doing. Okay? Let's see. What if I want to move, let me do an ls. What if I want to move my file into folder 2? What would that look like? Oh, MV is move. So what is the thing I want to move? MV. I want to move myfile.txt. Where do I want to move it to? Folder 2. And if you look up here, you should see myfile.txt, because what it's going to do is it's going to go scoot into folder 2. Now if I come up here and I double click on folder 2, you can see there it is. And if I do an ls here, it's not there, but if I cd into folder 2, I'm going to clear my screen. I'm currently, let me zoom in here. I did it, where am I now? I'm in folder 2. Let me do an ls. There's myfile.txt. All right. Graphically, what if you wanted to move this file from folder 2 into folder 1? Well, you'd probably do something like, hang on. All right. If I wanted to move myfile.txt from folder 2 to folder 1, I'd probably bring open a window where I'm in folder 2, then I might come over here and I'll double click on folder 1, and then what I'll do is I'll take this file and I'll drag it over here, right? That's how you're going to move things graphically. Let me actually move it back. Okay, I'm going to close that. So how can I move this into folder 1? Right now it depends where you are. I'm currently in folder 2. So if I do an ls, there's my file. I want to move myfile.txt. What I need to do is I need to move it up to here, up to the parent, and then down into folder 1. Yeah? So I want to move it up to the parent, and then I want to move it down into folder 1. And here I have open folder 1 here. So I should, there it appeared there. If I do an ls, remember I'm currently in folder 2. There's nothing in folder 2 now, but I can go up and down into folder 1, do an ls, and there it is. What if I want to make this, so where am I now? PWD. I'm currently, let me clear the screen, PWD. I'm currently in folder 1. What if I want to be in this courses directory? Give me a cd command that takes me there. What'll take me to here? Dot dot, that takes me to the parent. What'll take me to here? And then to here, right? Go up to the parent, up to the parent, up to the parent. PWD, there I am. Parent, 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 that takes me right there. I'm going to do an ls and see what's there. A bunch of junk I put over the years. There's a real nice command. Whoops, let me go back here. Change to previous directory. A CD, space, and then a hyphen. So, which directory was I in previously? I was in folder 1 previously. CD dash. That'll take me to where I was previously. There I go, I'm back there. Now what if I want to get back to courses? What was my previous directory? Courses. So that'll take me back to my previous directory. Takes me back to, see, so that's a nice technique. Often you have to work in two different directories. Once you've been in one and you go to the other, then you can just use CD hyphen to go back and forth between your two most recent directories. There's a concept of home, and if I look at this here, you even see that, so the idea of a home directory comes from the old Unix world, back as far as the 1970s, and you'll note that that's even adopted icon-wise, where it has T. Gibson here and it has a little house here. Your home directory depends on the machine. It's specified by the system administrator. On a Macintosh, it's always going to be users and then whatever ID your Mac gave you. If I go, for instance, to Jaguar, let me clear. If I look at whenever you log into a new machine or whenever I open up a new window, it'll always start you in your home directory. So if I type PWD, this is on my Mac, I'm in users T. Gibson. Let me close that. Here I logged into Jaguar. When I first log into Jaguar, it puts me in user faculty T.A. Gibson. For you, it'll be user student something or other. Yeah. So that's all configured by the administrator. I can type exit to get out of Jaguar. There's an easy way, no matter where you are. Let me go here. So no matter where you are on the system, it's always really easy to get back home to your home directory. And you just type CD all by itself, change to home directory. So I type CD, now I do a PWD, there I am home. If I want to return back to where I was, CD hyphen takes me back to my previous directory where I was working. That takes me back to this folder 1 that I've been sitting in. So the idea behind a home directory is simply that these are multi-user operating systems. Let's look at Jaguar again. If I type W to see who's online, ooh, quite a few people. Who? Let's see. Who? Yes, sir. All right. SSH. Okay, so that's for your own machine. That's fine. Remember, if you're on the, I didn't talk about this in this class. Did I? What did I talk? Did I talk at all about Jaguar on Wednesday? Did I talk about the lab computers and the drive on Jaguar? Okay, yeah. So any work you're doing right now is being done on Jaguar. So you could do this. It isn't going to buy you anything. This is my ID that's associated with my Chico State mail account. So for me, it's T.A. Gibson. And then if you're on campus, so you have your own computer. If you're on campus, that's all you need. If you're off campus, then you have to add the .csuchico.edu. If you're on campus and you happen to do it, that's fine. It's just if you want to save a few keystrokes and you're on campus, you can get away with that. Okay. It does not prompt me for a password because I just tricked out my account to have it automatically give some credentials. When you do it, in fact, if I do, what you'll normally see as you say SSH, you'll normally see this where it prompts you for a password. Now this is a point of confusion for people. Let me start, and this user doesn't exist, but note that when I'm typing on the keyboard, nothing's happening. Okay, those keystrokes are being taken. The only reason it's not showing anything is it's just so someone can't look over your shoulder and see the characters coming out here. But it is taking all the characters that I'm typing. So don't let that throw you when you enter a password on these text terminals. Hit enter. Of course, that user doesn't exist, and the password I typed in doesn't. It'll give you 2 or 3 tries. If you get it wrong, after 2 or 3 tries, it's going to say forget it and bring you back to your prompt. If you're off campus, so this always happens to a couple folks. If you're off campus and you're trying to connect and you enter in the wrong password several times, Jaguar is going to lock you out, I don't know, for several minutes. I don't know what the exact time is. So keep that in mind. If you've been connecting to Jaguar and getting this password prompt and you've tried several times and you keep getting it wrong, and then all of a sudden it just freezes and you eventually get a timeout, that just simply means that Jaguar is not going to let you log in for another few minutes. That's just to keep hackers from creating automated scripts from trying thousands and thousands of passwords. If it happens to you, just wait a few minutes and then you can try again and it'll let you try again. Okay? So let me see. Let me look at my list here at what we got going. Occasionally you need to refer to the current directory. So just as the parent directory is referred to as ... the current directory is referred to as . So let me give you an example of where you might want to use that. So I'm currently in folder 1, and inside of folder 1 is myfile.txt. Let me actually go up to the parent. So now I am up here. And what I want to do is I want to move myfile.txt out of folder 1 and I want to put it right here where I'm currently sitting. So what you do is you say I want to move in folder 1, I want to get out myfile.txt, and I want to move it to my current directory where I'm currently sitting. So that's a use case for where you would actually need that. And there it is right there. Just to drive the point home, you can be really silly about this. I can say move myfile.txt into folder 1, up to the parent, back down to folder 1, up to the parent, and then down to folder 2. Right? This is nonsensical. No sane person would do that, but you're certainly just showing the consistency in using this. It's always relative to where you currently are. You can kind of jog around wherever you want in the file system to move things around. What about renaming? So where did I move that? Move folder 2, my file. Let me move it in the current directory. Renaming is simply move myfile.txt to yourfile.txt, and we should see that rename right here. One thing that's always implied, that's exactly the same as doing this. This is saying in the current directory, take this file and move it to the same directory but give it a different name. So that's an equivalent statement there. All right. So what you need to do, and there's one last thing I haven't been able to talk about. I'm going to run out of time. I'll just very, very briefly talk about it. The opening activity, which I'll show you, go over in just a moment, has you work with a programmer's text editor called Vim. And what you will want to do is, if you go to, that's the wrong class. I think it's a C++ getting help. It's actually getting help on a whole bunch of things. If I click on C++ getting help, yeah, right. At the bottom here, there are two things. Learning the Linux command line, that's what we've been starting to do. It's worth taking a little bit of time on these things. I will certainly spend some time moving forward in future classes and labs talking about this editor. However, what you really need to do is look at some of these things that say tutorials. You need to, what I would do, I'd strongly recommend, definitely before Monday, find a Vim tutorial and spend 30 minutes with it. You could always spend 30 minutes on this one. We're at the Linux prompt, you type Vim tutor. If I type that, let me make this a little bit bigger. Vim tutor. My problem is I've blown up this terminal so the full screen doesn't show. Let me see what normal people would see. Yeah, normally you'd see that much. So it gives you a couple paragraphs of hi, aren't I happy and great, and then it says to move the cursor, press the H, J, K, and L keys as indicated. Oh, actually it gives you a little more. And then it shows you those movement keys. And it's basically, you can just read through this and follow along, and it'll teach you a little bit about it. I think it's fine. It's great. You might enjoy some of these other tutorials a bit more that I've linked to. So definitely before Monday, spend a little bit of time doing one of those. What you should start in on now is labs. Lab 1, computer environment. Setting up the environment. Are you using a Mac? If you are, then do this stuff. If you aren't using a Mac and you're just logged into these lab computers, then start here on number 1. You've already done some of this. You've logged in. You've opened up a terminal window. Then you want to type that in. Note there are no spaces here. The common error is people will type a tilde then a space, then the rest of this, don't put a tilde there. Create a directory called labs, cd into lab. Right, it's basically going to exercise some of the stuff we've been doing, and then it's going to throw you into this editor and it's going to have you type something in. So if you just follow through this, and hopefully some of you will definitely finish this in the next 10 minutes. Others of you won't. That's fine. I've got an extra week attached to all these deadlines this first week. So if you don't finish it now, we'll get it done next week. All right? Or you do it at home, right? You could log into Jaguar from home and finish it up if you're inclined. All right. So with that, I'll stop this recording and I'll just kind of walk around and help you as you have problems and issues.